Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Dusan Krstic. I work as Regional Sales Manager at EBSCO Information Services in Central Europe. I wanted to thank you all for attending today's webinar about FOLIO. We have prepared one, I hope, hopefully very interesting session for today. And before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to review with you to ensure the smooth session. This session is being recorded and all attendee lines are muted to avoid any sound feedback or interruptions. If you are having any technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the chat box to contact me directly and I will do my best to help you resolving this eventual issue. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to enter them into the chat box at any time. At the end of the presentation, I will read those questions to Roman and he will answer to your question. Now, I would like to also introduce our team here. Here is Valeria Bradash. She is account executive for Central Europe. Karolina Podlouska, trainer for Central and Southeastern Europe. And me, Dusan Krstic, as I said, Regional Sales Manager. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you to our presenter. It is Mr. Roman Piontek. He is our Director of SaaS Innovations at EBSCO Information Services. So, Roman, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dusan. Hello to everybody. Thank you for your time and your interest. And today we'll be largely talking about the FOLIO platform, what that is and what we do with it. I'll come to that in a few seconds. But before I go into that, I would like to sort of set the frame of today and tell you that it will be largely about the ERM sub-portion, the electronic resource management sub-portion of FOLIO. Although I'll also go into the print functionalities because there are so many, we have to limit ourselves, right? So it's a full system and today we have limited time and I hope to be done with most of it rather soon so that we have ample time for questions. But again, I will go into some print functionality. However, it will be somewhat limited. If you have any questions, as Dusan already told you, feel free to post them in the chat. Feel also free to contact us afterwards, be it Dusan, be it me directly, and we'll be happy to have discussions with you on specific detailed topics. Now, there is also another product that I would like to sort of put between the ERM bit of FOLIO and the print functionalities of FOLIO, and that would be a product which is called Panorama, a product largely dedicated to all kinds of statistics and analytics, not just FOLIO, right? So we will see that it can encompass all kinds of other third-party products as well. So an open statistics and analysis platform that I will sort of stick between the two parts of FOLIO. Well, then, let's start with the ERM bit of FOLIO and rather also with the general story and history behind FOLIO. So as you can see on the screen, FOLIO is an acronym, right? So the future of libraries is open, F-O-L-I-O, that is FOLIO. And the openness sort of model, the character, that is something that describes FOLIO very, very well. So firstly, it's open source. That means that there is a community that is working on that. It's not just EBSCO as a service provider. There is an entire community, and you yourselves, if you wish to, you can become part of that community. And it's rather easy to get aboard and start discussing things on some of the special interest group forums, etc. It's not just open in terms of open source, it's also open in terms of how you put the system together, and we'll see that in a minute. And it's also open in terms of who you work with. So that leads us to the next point, which is essentially the EBSCO FOLIO services, right? So if it's an open platform, what is EBSCO's role on it? We, as a database service provider, as you know us, as a discovery service provider, we also have other products, but we are, amongst others, also providing these FOLIO services. And there is a page that outlines them a little bit. So essentially, we help with the implementation of the system. And we're also not the only ones doing that. We have quite a few implementation partners in the specific regions. So I know that there are a few Greek customers online. We have a Greek partner doing services in Greek, doing the localization of the system, helping us with the migration of data, with data analyses and all of that. And there are also other partners in other regions and others also coming aboard as we speak. That also includes the support of the system once it has been implemented. And of course, all the things in sort of surrounding that, the training, then additional materials, additional documentation, additional development perhaps, right? And that leads us into so-called professional services of ours. That can include some integrations with existing EBSCO services, right? So Folio is a central platform for all kinds of library services, and it can interact with, say, the EBSCO discovery system, or with the EBSCO knowledge base, or with some other platforms that don't have to be EBSCO's platforms, right? That is the beauty of it. And before I go into some such examples, and we'll see quite a few of them over the course of this presentation, the one last word on hosting, or rather infrastructure, because that's also something that we provide. We provide complete infrastructure for that system. So if you choose to go with Folio, then you will also have the option to be hosted by us, but not just hosting, it's also the monitoring, the alerting, the backups, right? So we automate backups if something should happen to the system, which can sometimes be the case, right? So nothing is completely secure, but we always have that backup, and those backups are created in at a frequency of 5 seconds, right? So if something happens to the system, you can always go back to the state of things 5 seconds before that very incident. So it's a complete set of services that we provide. Who have we already implemented? By the way, we're not the only implementers, right? Just to sort of drive home that point once again, but we have done quite a few, almost 50 at this point, about 50 implementations. And here are some of them, right? So there is a community page that outlines these details, and you can see a few names. For example, the National Library of Florence, that was implemented with a full version of Folio. So it's a full library system that we implemented for them. Others, as you can see, for example, the Chalmers University in Sweden were also full, but there are some that chose to go for the time being with an ERM system, so with the electronic resource management part of Folio. So you see, you have open choice, and that leads us back to the character of openness that I already alluded to, which means that you choose how to set up the system. Do you need a complete system? Yes or no? Do you need just the ERM part? Do you need just the ERM part plus or minus a few other modules? Everything is possible, and you choose. A few other names, as you can see, quite a few already. A few from the US, Missouri State University. We have Cornell University, quite a big name. Then we have, for example, Trinity College in Cambridge in the UK, University of Zaragoza in Spain, many others, and those are not all of them, right? This is just an excerpt. This is just a small overview. So Folio is a complete system, and it's not that new anymore. The first library who completely went live with Folio did that 2 years ago. That was indeed the Chalmers University that I already alluded to. It's in Sweden. It's the Swedish technical university, if you will, and they said goodbye to their legacy system, which was Sierra, III Innovative Systems, now Ex Libris ProQuest, and now Clarivet, if you will. And they chose to go with Folio instead. Now, as I already said, Folio is a is an open system. That also means that there is lots of APIs, data interfaces. Now, we will not go into the technical details, but I just wanted to show you the plethora, the multitude, the fullness of how many APIs there are, right? So if we scroll through this page, there are dozens and dozens and even hundreds of all kinds of data interfaces. And those are all the points that we will see once we go into Folio in a few minutes. So anything that you have in the system, be it license data, be it cost data, be it library item metadata, be it your catalog, be it your repository, everything is accessible through these data interfaces, these APIs, and anything in the system can thus be connected to third-party systems. So if you want Folio to exchange information with some discovery service, with some acquisitions platform that you buy ebooks from, for example, anything really works, right? So the system is absolutely open. If that third-party system is a little bit dated, for example, a little bit older, then we might have a problem because that system doesn't really support too much import and export, but Folio does under any circumstances, under each and every case, if you will. Now, what does Folio look like? This can be an example of Folio. And I would like to draw your attention to a few things here. One of them would be that what I have opened up in this tab in my browser, and it's a browser-based system, right? So it's completely in the cloud. You don't have to install anything locally on a client, right? So you don't have to install something on your computer to have it running. Where you install it, then physically, that is up to you, right? So it's an open system. It can run on any server. But as I said earlier, we also provide that infrastructure. So we have servers of our own that are in the European Union that are certified and that also are endowed with these backup services that I already alluded to, with these monitoring and upgrade services and all of that, right? So we will do the upgrades in an automated manner, for example, and you don't have to handle that on your own. One thing that I would like to show you here is that I have a select number of modules here. I have agreements, electronic holdings, e-holdings, finance, invoices, and orders. And if I click on this, I don't have too many more. So I don't have the print part. And this could be an instance of an ERM installation, right? So I only have those applications that I need for my electronic holdings. Now, in a minute, we will see a full installation where I also have all these applications for cataloging, for acquisitions of print resources, for the check-in and check-out, right? So for lending, which I don't need for electronic resources. So again, it's up to you how you choose to set up the system, and we'll of course help you with that. A third thing that I would like to show you on this very page is the translatability and localizability of Folio, right? So if I wish to, I can translate it into Czech, or I can translate it into Greek, say, or any other of these languages, and languages can be added at will, right? So if I scroll down, this is a demo installation. So this is one particular example of Folio. We already have Hungarian here, we have Polish, but if you need, say, Serbian, or if you need any other language, Turkish, if you need Japanese, then that is something that you can do. And there is a page where you have access to all the labels here, and you decide how to translate them. Now, as I already said, this is an open system in terms of adaptability. So if you have complicated institutions, if you work with a consortium, say, and if you have different institutions, different campuses, different libraries, and in these libraries, you have many different locations. So in this case, we have 2 locations in a library that belong to a specific campus that belong to the University of Alabama. But if you would like to set up many more of these, that is possible, and you can also reuse these bits, these information bits, these bits and pieces in other applications and for other users of your system. What we also already see here is that I have a full system opened up, right? So remember, if I go back one tab, I only have these electronic resource management applications here, my electronic holdings, my agreements, my licenses, and I don't have check-in and checkout, for example. But here, I do have check-in and checkout. Perhaps I need some course reserves. Perhaps I need all of these other things. Data import, perhaps I need an inventory, I need to request things, and all of that is also up to you, and it's a matter of choice how you set up the system and how you want us to set up the system if you choose to go with us as an implementation partner. Now, let's go into the ERM part of Folio. As I already said, that the focus would be on that to some extent, at least. What we see here is the central bit, the core of ERM, where I see my providers, my packages, my titles, and I can search them. And I can then start activating them and playing with them, putting together my subscriptions, right? Because as a library, I subscribe to a specific amount of providers, packages, and titles. And this is all based on the EBSCO knowledge base. So we have a team of 34 people who are working on the gathering of all this kind of information across the board. As you can see, we don't have just EBSCO information inside that. We also have information on Springer Nature, or Elsevier, or Wiley, or whatever it is, also small publishers, also regional publishers. And then I see, okay, Springer has a total number of packages. If I click on that, I can start activating my specific packages and telling the system that I subscribe to only 2 of these 1,700 here, or I subscribe to 300 of those, and perhaps of some packages I only have specific titles from. And that is also something that you can do. So you pick and choose your activations and selections. As I said, that is based on the EBSCO knowledge base. This is this great motor in the background, and the 34 people that are working on that are gathering information on 21,000 different databases / packages. So Springer ebook packages, those could be Elsevier packages, those could be also EBSCO databases, but also ProQuest databases. Anything really that is around in the electronic world. And we have information over more than 7 million titles. So that tells us a story of the possible potential subscription elements that are around in the world of electronic resources. Those are not the articles inside the titles, right? So the articles go into the billions, but this is just the title count, right? So these are the titles that we cover the addresses of, if you will. It's a huge address book, right? So what title belongs to what package, and what package belongs to what provider. Now, let us go into the system and try an example. Let's say I have a medical department and I'm interested in this Česká gynekologie. That would be my title that I would like to activate for my medical department. And I see this is also information coming from the knowledge base that this title might, in principle at least, be available through 5 packages, 5 different ones. And currently, I have activated it through the Medline Complete package. It's just the name of a package, right? And this is what I see as a librarian, right? So I am in my Folio system, and this is what I see as an administrator of the system. But let us ask the question, what the end user, what a student, a professor, anybody who would like to access the end results would see. And that we see here, that is the end user interface. And in this case, it is an EBSCO discovery instance. It could also be some other interface, for example, a viewfind, if you prefer that. But we as EBSCO, we are trying to make our systems that we have already had and developed over the years as open as possible, right? So they should work with Folio, but also with other systems. And I will show you this interaction. So this is what I see as an end user, right? So those are all my results that I get from my indices, from my subscriptions. Now, if I go into the details of this particular title as an end user still, I see that this title at this very point in time is available through Medline Complete. And that corresponds exactly to what I saw as an administrator here. Now, let's say that I would like to change that now. As an administrator, I would like to add a subscription to that same title, but through a different package. Let's say biomedical reference collection, corporate. Say I'm a corporate, I'm a corporation, or I interact with some corporations, and I would like to add that package too. Well, what do? I add it to my holdings. I wait for a few seconds, and then after that has passed, the title has been updated, and let's go back into the end user interface and see how that changes if I refresh my screen here. So that also takes a few seconds, and now I should see the full text access through two different packages, as you can see, Medline and the one that I activated just a second ago. Now that is the beginning of everything, right? So that is the setup of my packages, my titles, my subscriptions. Another thing that is also very important in the realm, in the context of ERM, electronic resource management, is of course the situation around my licenses and agreements. So say this one package, the Medline Complete, that I'm back in Folio right now, right? So you see we're changing sort of hats, we're changing the views. I see what I see as an administrator now, but I can also see what an end user sees here, right? So this is the end user view, and this again is the administrator's view. And say as an administrator, I would like to add an agreement with specific license terms, with specific durations, with perhaps specific cost as well, and all of that to this particular package. How do I do that? I scroll a little bit down, and then I see this section here that says agreements, and I would now like to add an agreement, say an EBSCO agreement, right? It doesn't have to be an EBSCO agreement. It could be an Elsevier agreement, right? Anything. You see, it's quite a bit that we have here. I have American Chemical Society, anything that I have already entered into the system. And this is up to you, right? So this doesn't come from EBSCO. This is something that the customers define. But I wanted EBSCO. So let's say I want to add this EBSCO Information Services database discovery and ebooks agreement to that. And it's as easy as that, right? So now I have created a link between this package and that agreement. Now, before we go into the actual agreement, let me go back once again into the end user interface and see what has changed if I refresh my screen here again. Because there's going to be a small thingy. As you can see, there's this little wheel that keeps spinning, and now it's done. And what I can see now are my license terms. So this is a demo installation, right? It's just a choice of license terms that we EBSCO employees demoing the system have added, but it's entirely up to you what you want to add to this. So for example, walk-in access, is that permitted? If somebody walks into a library and doesn't necessarily belong to the library, do they have access to that particular resource at that point in time? Well, in this case, yes, but they should ask the reference desk for access. Where does this information come from, right? So how did it appear and where does it come from? Now, let's go back into Folio and let's see where it came from. So it is from a different app. It's from an application called Agreements. And here is where we see all kinds of agreements. And we saw them just a minute ago when this little window opened up and I was able to choose between all of these different agreements. I was, however, in a different app at that point, right? I was in my database, a package app, which is called eHoldings, but I still have access to information from other modules, from other parts of Folio. And that goes to say, and that goes to show how the architecture of Folio is centered around that interoperability of different applications, right? So you store all of these different pieces of information elsewhere, perhaps, but you always have access to them. Now, what does one single agreement look like, right? So this EBSCO Information Services agreement, for example, that I just added to my Medline Complete. These are the details, right? So a few metadata, as you can see here, perhaps specific periods that I would like to work with, right? So if that has an end date, then perhaps 3 months before that agreement period ends, or perhaps 2 months before, I would like to have an internal contact notified Okay, so I add some of these internal contacts. For example, this one here is an EBSCO employee, right? So he works at our EBSCO library, or you can add another one, right? So you can tell the system, okay, I would like to replace the user, and another window opens. And this is where I could, for example, search for myself. And I see, okay, I could add myself now, right? Or some other employee of the library, some other administrator that should be notified if something has to be done with that agreement. What else can I add to an agreement? And you see the agreement app is really the crown of ERM because everything comes together and I have all these different elements working in unison with each other. I have my internal contacts, I have my agreement lines. So those are the lines that point to specific packages. Perhaps Business Source Ultimate is another package that is associated with this agreement. Academic Search, perhaps there's a purchase order line, right? So that is again a different application, the orders application that we will see in a minute in a different context. And I would like to have information from that application linked to whatever this agreement is all about. And then we come to license information. And that is exactly where these license terms, you see these ones here, the license terms came from, right? So I see I have an EBSCO Information Services license. Perhaps I need a second license, right? So a services general license or a consortia license, or say just a Hungarian license if that exists, and so on and so forth. And that way I can build a hierarchical system. That is also why we have an app for agreements and we have an app for licenses, because I can store them at different places and then link them in a way that is exactly needed for me. Perhaps I would like to, as in this case, add 2 license term sets to one single agreement, or vice versa. I would like to add a single license term set with a number of agreements. Then what else can I link to? Many, many more other things, but just a few examples. For example, organizational data. What exact contacts at EBSCO do I want to be associated with this EBSCO contract? Well, there's another app for that. We'll see that in a minute, where all this information lives. And also, I have, for example, a different related agreement. And as you can already see, it's an entire pyramid of things that I can build. Different agreements related to each other, different license terms, different sets of users that should be notified. And all of that is way stronger than just Excel files, if you think about that, right? So it's a central system where everything is stored and everything ties back into each other and together. Now, since we already talked about these licenses here, let's have a quick look at what they would look like. So this is a different app, as we saw already, and I have many different licenses, for example, one of which could be this general license. And see, what we have here is a number of terms, right? So print ILL, like interlibrary loan, is that possible or not? Is that visible to the end user? Right, in this case, not, it's just internally visible. Is walk-in access permitted? Yes, and it's publicly visible. And I should ask a reference desk for access. Let's just quickly compare that to what we saw in the end user interface. And indeed, that's exactly what appears here, right? So these two systems are synchronized. The FOLIO system that we see here, right here, right? So walk-in access permitted, yes or no? And the end user system, in this case, the EBSCO discovery system, both work in unison with each other. If there's a license term that I need to add to the system, but it doesn't exist out of the box yet, then I go into the settings and licenses, terms. And as you can see, there's a whole number, a larger number than what we just saw in that particular license of all kinds of terms. And if I want to add a new one, I just click new and I name it, I describe it, I add perhaps different types, and these types can be also associated with different tasks and so on and so forth. So I have complete freedom as far as the system goes. Now, since we already saw a few other apps tying into that agreements app, the users app and the organizations app, let's have a quick look at those. So I'm in the users app right now, and this is where I enter information on me as an administrator, right? So I'm an admin of the system. I can change my password, for example. I change my email, whatever it is. But an interesting point is also I can change my user permissions. And I'm a super admin here, so I have quite a few. But if I wanted to restrict that, then I click on this button, and in a few seconds, I will see a complete list of all kinds of permissions, right? Long, long list, as you can see. Do I want to have access to courses, for example? Do I want to have access to the electronic holdings that we just saw a minute ago? Do I want to have access to fees, fines, finance, whatever it might be? Now I can set that up accordingly and tell, as a super administrator, what other users of the library should have what kind of access to the system. Another application that I talked about earlier would be tasks, right? So if I have John Lawrence, who's an ERM librarian, and he should contact a vendor at a specific point, right? So in this case, I haven't entered a start date. He just has to do it, but I can also change the date. I can change the deadline. I can change the team. I can change the status and all of that. And once I have done that, this user will be notified using that email that we just saw for myself, right? So if I go back one tab, here I can see, okay, Roman Piontek has got this email address and he should be notified if some task has been assigned to him, or some other user, in this case, John Lawrence. Then what we also briefly saw in the Agreements app would be organizations. So where do I store all that contact information? For example, with Academia Ikiado or Amazon, or whatever it might be that I have as providers, as content providers, or perhaps some sister libraries that I interact with, or some other service providers, whoever it might be. I enter these contact informations here, and then I can link them with the agreements that we just saw. So for Amazon, for example, maybe I have a URL for customer service. Maybe I have an email address for returns. Maybe I have a phone number for shipments, and so on and so forth. And I pick and choose what to enter in here. All right. So with that said, let's have a look at statistics and analytics. And as I said, another piece of software will come into play as we talk about this. However, what we see here is an example of statistics, electronic resource usage statistics, counter statistics, essentially, that I have for a specific package, right? So it's the Wiley collection, for example, and I see exactly how much I've paid for them, what the usage was, what the cost per use was. And this is in Folio, right? So in my eHoldings app. Then I can do that for a specific title, right? So fish biology, for example, just an example, right? So for any title, really. And if I enlarge this, I see all these different packages, all these different platforms that the title is available through, and I see what the usage was, and I can now export that if I need to present these types of statistics to somebody. Still in Folio, in my eHoldings. But as I said earlier, we have this other system of ours, which is called Panorama. That is a system that works with Folio very well, but it can also be used with a multitude of other systems. So any system that is able to deliver data streams, and we'll see quite a few examples in a few minutes, that can be added to my to my Panorama installation. All right, so for example, it's an authentication system. Right, so let's see what that looks like. I see that this authentication system, in this case, it could be an easy proxy, that delivers me some statistics that show me how exactly users were accessing my system from some geographical point, or what the trend was and how it developed over time, or actually any other kind of statistics, because you as an administrator of the system, you have complete control over the colors, the way it has to look, right? So should this be a chart like this, or should it be a pie chart? Or perhaps I would like to juxtapose, to compare these data with some other data, and that is also possible. We'll see that in a minute. So authentication, one other example, one different other system that can be added to Panorama. Circulation, right? So this is my library system. It needs to really load here. This is my library system and how I lend books. Example, right? Or for example, if I want to see it by publisher, what was the most popular platform that was used? Well, then I can see that. Or perhaps I would like to see that by subject areas. And I see that language and literature was, for example, the most popular here. All of that is possible. Any kind of comparison of the data that come through that library system in that case, or the authentication system, as we saw a few seconds ago, or any other system can be put into Panorama and compared with other data. Another example, budgets, right? So if I want to see how much money I spent on that, on what, then I see, okay, 34% I spent on databases, 29% on e-journals, and so on and so forth. That is also one thing. Then e-resources, what we saw just a minute ago in this form, if you remember, right? So this is how I can see it in Folio. In a table view, I can also see that in a graphic view in Panorama, right? So if I want to see the trend, if I want to see that by publisher, by platform, by title, that is also something that I can set up. Then, as I said earlier, we can compare different systems with each other. So if I have SFX, right, so the Ex Libris link resolver, and I would like to compare that with a different system. There is a system called libkey from Third Iron, which is sort of similar to SFX, but different. And if I have those two systems and I want to compare the usage of my resources through them, perhaps I also have my counter statistics, then I can juxtapose them, right? So I can compare them and put them together into one single statistic. So you see Third Iron, SFX, and counter, and I see, okay, nature or science, right? So all of these different titles, how have they been used through the different systems? And I see, okay, SFX was the most popular one in most cases, but there was also Third Iron use in this case, something like that. Something else, it doesn't have to be a library system, as I said, right? It could be something that shows me the usage of library premises. So how have been rooms and courses in within the context of my university been used over time? That is also something that I can view. Or just to end this statistics part, something that's also quite interesting is the comparison of two data streams here. What we see here are grades. This is the American system, right? So 0 is, of course, very bad, and 4 is a good grade that a student wrote, okay? And then the x-axis shows me the usage of the library. And this shows us very, very dramatically, if you will, that all the students that wrote the good grades used the library quite often, whereas all the students that didn't write good grades, that were sort of lazy, if you will, they also didn't really use the library at all, right? So you see quite a few zeros here. And that is something that you can show to your rector, for example, and showcase the value of the library. Just another example. Again, these are just examples of what is possible with Panorama. I can show and compare two very different systems, a campus system that shows my grades and my library system that shows the usage of the library. How many times did they borrow books from the library? Or how many times did they go into the library to search in databases, right? So all of that I can juxtapose. Cost per use, usage in different systems, authentication versus link resolver, whatever it might be, you choose, and with Panorama, it's possible. Now, as I said, I would like to finish this off with a few with a few spotlights on print functionality, right? Because we went at length through electronic resources, how I activate them, what I can do with licensing agreements in that context, and how statistics work, not just for electronic resources. As we saw earlier, we saw already some analytics for the usage of the library, right? So borrowing, lending, that type of stuff. So how does print work in that combination of my discovery system here that is available to the end users and Folio as an administrator's tool? Okay, so I'm back in my EDS, in my discovery interface, my OPAC, if you will, right? And I have authenticated myself, and that is an important point that we see here. We need some kind of an authentication system in the background. There is also one that we provide, Open Athens, but you can use a different one. You could, for example, use a shibboleth, but it has to be a single sign-on system so that ultimately I see my loans and my requests and my fees. So the system recognizes me as Roman, right? So this is Roman's folder. This is me. I'm not just a guest. And I see here, when I open up my loans, that I have one book already borrowed from the library, a different universe. It's at home. I have borrowed it. And now I would like to borrow another one. Now, normally I would go into the library, I would pick it from my shelf, and I would go to a self-check machine, or I would go to a specific librarian, to a counter, and have that librarian scan my book. In this case, I don't have a scanner and I don't have a self-check machine connected to my computer, so I will do it manually, right? So I copy my barcode here of a specific book, like Lost and Found in Prague. That's the book that I'm interested in. I go into the checkout app, I find myself as a patron, and normally, well, it would be scanned, right? So I would scan my card and I would get my barcode here. And now I can enter the barcode of the book. And as we already saw earlier in the end user interface, I have just one book loaned at this point, loaned from the library, by the library rather. And once I actually go into the checkout and click enter here, right, it takes a few seconds, and then I can see some of the details. For example, at this point, I can have the book with me for 14 days. But as a librarian, as an administrator, I can change that right now, right? I could change the due date and do many, many other things. But we don't have time to go into all the details of Folio because that will take hours upon hours. Just so you see that there is way more to the system. However, what I did now is borrow the book. And that is also synchronized with this end user interface, right? So if I refresh my screen here, oh, sorry, I lost my cookie. That happens sometimes if I haven't used the system for more than, I think, 20 minutes it is. And I had this tab already preloaded, so I have to reload it again so that it recognizes me as me. Yes, so you see I'm a guest, so I have to sign in. That is what I told you earlier, right? So Open Athens is working right now. And now it tells me to please wait, and it will come up and I will see my specific loans, right? So you see my loans and my requests. And if I click on my loans now, I will see that it's two books, right? So it's the different universe that I already had, and it's this new book that I just borrowed from the library, Lost and Found in Prague. Perfect. Another thing that I can do is, of course, request books, right? So I also see my requests here, and I see that some time ago, I already requested one book, Marketing. Now that's one book that I requested. Perhaps I would like to request another one. Perhaps it's a book on Greek. So this Greek dictionary and phrase book. And it's possible that I have lost my cookie here again, but let's try it. Yes, I've lost it. So I have to reload it here. But it's no biggie. It just takes a few seconds. And then I will request this book through the end user interface, right? So this is my EDS, my discovery, and I want to search for Greek, and then I will find a book, and I have to authenticate myself, of course. This happens, right? Because I preloaded all my tabs earlier, and now I have to re-authenticate because they lost their cookie. Okay, so I'd like to place a request for this book. Okay, now a window opens and I can pick and choose, right? And also these options that I see here, those are administrable by the library. So the library manages them. Should I see this option here, right? The first available copy or not, or a specific copy? Should there be a calendar, for example, where I can specify for how long my reservation, my request should be valid? And many other things, right? So this is just an example. But in this case, I will just submit it. And that means that now I have two books requested from my library, and I will refresh my screen here. And oh, this was the wrong window. I'm sorry. I'll go back into Folio. That's what I wanted to do. Right. So I see that I had already requested this marketing some time ago, but if I just refresh my screen, I will get that information that just came through the end user interface, and I will see that different request, that second request, right? Greek, dictionary, and phrasebook. That is exactly what I just requested through that other interface, and they are both connected with each other. Now, finally, let me go into ordering. So the final minutes of my presentation, I would like to spend on that. Say you have an external system, such as Gobi, which is just an example, right? So I use it here because it's an EBSCO system and I have a connection with it, and this is an EBSCO demo, right? And I can show you that very well because I have access to both systems. But it could be any platform, right? So if you want to order your books through, say, the EBSCO ebook platform or the ProQuest ebook platform, right? It doesn't matter. Then, as I told you earlier, Folio has got all of these open interfaces, and that is a thing that makes sure that I can interact with these third-party systems. How exactly? We'll see that in a minute. So say I'm interested in Czech law in historical context. That is something that I would like to order a book on, right? So this is not borrowing, this is ordering. I am a librarian, an acquisitions librarian. I go into this platform and I would like to order this particular book. So what I had prepared is already this order form, and I have to fill a few things, right? So the location, for example, it has a 2 at the end. Perhaps we can remember that because we will see that in a minute. Now I would just like to order it. Okay, so let's submit that. That's good, right? Because I now have a library open order, but it's also good because this third-party system, this Gobi platform, or it could be the ProQuest ebook platform, as I said, this is also directly connected with my Folio. We're back in Folio, as you can see. And earlier on, I searched for Czech law in my orders app, and I didn't find anything because at that point, it hadn't been ordered yet. But since I ordered it through that external platform just a second ago, let me refresh my screen. And we will see that now, if everything goes according to plan, and I don't think yes, very well, right? So that is working perfectly. I have my Czech law now appearing, right? And I saw, I see exactly the metadata that came in through that different platform. I see, I have a purchase order line, for example. I see perhaps some vendor reference, and I see all of those things that are associated with it, including the location. You remember with the 2 at the end that I just entered into that other platform, and it was synchronized right away with Folio. Now, these orders are also synchronized with invoices, right? So there's another thing. I don't have an invoice for that new book that I just ordered yet. So I'm showing you an invoice that is a little bit older. But it also came in through Gobi, right? So I have farming as financial asset. That is something that has been added to this invoice, right? So this book is associated with this invoice. The price is associated with that. Perhaps I would like to add or to remove some of these invoice lines. Or if I click on this one, I can then see that it is associated with a purchase order. Right, so this is my purchase order line. And if I click on that, I will be redirected into my orders app that I saw just a minute ago, right? That was the app that was filled by the external platform. And in this case, this purchase order is already associated with an invoice. But it is also associated with a fund, with a budget. And that, if I click on this one, that brings us into the finance application. And this is where you can group all your money, if you will, right? So we have all these different funds, for example, for Asian history, for specific faculties, for specific books. I can have a fund just for books, or a fund for ebooks, or a fund for ebooks on medicine, and so on and so forth. And this is also where we have that fund for science that was associated with the invoice that we saw a minute ago. And that can be grouped into groups and ledgers, larger groups, if you will. And those can sum up to fiscal years, right? So I see exactly how much total funding I had for my fiscal year, how much I already spent on that, how much is still available. And if I click on different options here, right, so I can start editing it, I can start viewing it in somewhat more detail, then a whole nother world will open up. And of course, There are many, many more options that you can do. But just to show you how all of these pieces are related and how orders interact with invoices, how invoices interact with finances, how all of that interacts with licenses and agreements. That's what we saw earlier, how that interacts with a third-party platform such as Gobi or EBSCO Discovery Service, or again, it could be the ProQuest ebook platform or anything else really, and Folio is open to that and has got this modular structure. It's also called microservice structure because all of these different apps you see, agreements, check-in, check-out, circulation log, data export, invoices, licenses, orders, organizations, all of them work together in unison. Now, just a few more seconds on what is possible, what else is possible with print materials that you have in your library. So this is a look at cataloging. And there is much more to say on cataloging, of course, right? We could spend hours on cataloging alone, but just to give you a brief overview that Folio is, of course, also a print system. I sort of concentrated on the ERM bit of Folios today, but of course it's a full library system. And if I want to change the metadata, this is Mark 21, but it could be also another format, right? So if I have Dublin Core or Unimark, or if I have an archival system that uses EAD or mods or METs or something like that, then I can adapt the system to work with those kinds of formats as well. And if you will, I can now start changing, for example, the leader. But it will not be possible in this case because you see the record cannot be saved because the leader must contain 24 characters. So this is also some validation routine that I can build into my system. And many other things more, right? So just a brief look at cataloging. I already said that, of course, different other types of formats can interact with Folio. Folio is basically based on BibFrame, and Mark 21 is one exchange format. That is, of course, used by the majority of libraries worldwide, and we have optimized the system for Mark 21. Yes, but also other formats are possible. And how do you do that? How do you tell a system what to do with a specific piece of a format, with a field, once it comes in, once I have imported, right? Data import into the system. Because I don't want to do all of these things manually all the time, right? So I want to import them in an automated, in a frequent way. So how do I do that? Okay, I tell the settings here, I'm in the settings app, that a Mark bibliographic record that arrives should be usable, for example, for the invoices, or perhaps I would like to associate with Mark authorities or not, or with the holdings that I have, or with item information, whatever it is. I tell the system what apps should interact with that. And then I tell the system what to do with those fields that come in. So for example, in Mark, there is a 945 field with a subfield I, and this one I would like to translate, if you will, into a human readable form that says barcode, right? So if I go into the native cataloging app of Folio, I will see that that's the barcode. I won't have to necessarily deal with a 945 field anymore. I can just see in a human readable form that this is the barcode. Perhaps there is some criteria that I would like to match or not. And many, many more things that I can do with cataloging and tell the system exactly how to transform different formats into each other, how to import them, how to export them. There's data export app as well, and how to deal with all of these different things around, as we saw, cataloging, around borrowing, around the acquisitions, around electronic resource management, and everything is in a central system, as you can see. So it's an all-encompassing system for statistics, electronics, and print. And with that, I would like to conclude my presentation part. And I think there should already be questions. I don't see the chat, but yes. I see that there are quite a few in the chat. I see the number associated with the chat.
Okay, Rowan, yes, we have quite a few questions. So I would like to start with the first one we received. It is, can EBSCO Folio ERM be used as a standalone product?
Oh yes, certainly. So I showed you ERM as part of the larger Folio platform. But if you only need ERM as a standalone, and you don't need it for print, and let me go back to one of the earlier tabs that I had, this one here, we see that I don't have check-in apps here, right? So if I open up all my apps, I don't have check-in, I don't have cataloging either. I only have my electronic resources. And if you only need that, yes, please, we can set it up that way. And it can also interact with any other third-party system that you have. As I told you, Folio has got open APIs, and it can also it can also be used in parallel with another library system, right? So if you have Koha, or if you have Alma, or if you have Aleph, anything that is a library system that you don't want to migrate fully to Folio yet, you can use it alongside Folio ERM, or you can choose to migrate to a full Folio. It's up to you. But in any case, ERM can be used as a standalone application. No questions asked.
Okay, thank you, Roman. And the next question is, can Panorama work with other library systems too?
Oh, yes. So this was Panorama. And we see here circulation analytics, for example, right? So those come from a library system. And that library system does not have to be Folio, right? So we include Panorama with Folio. If you choose to have us as a service provider and you want to have full Folio, so with all the print bits and all of that, then we will provide you with Panorama as well. And you will see your circulation statistics. And you will see, for example, I have here, I think, locations. Where is it? Location analysis, right? Or orders analysis, or requests analysis. The requests that came in through my library system. And it works not just with Folio, but we have customers that use Panorama alongside Alma, alongside Sierra, alongside many other systems, right? So it is definitely possible.
Thank you. Then next question is, can Folio be implemented on local servers?
Yes, so Folio, let me go back to the very beginning. Folio is open, right? The future of libraries is open. That means that you can do all the things that I showed you, the implementation, right? The setup of the system, the linking, the migration, the filling of the data. You can do all of that on your own, and you can host it on your own if you have the time, the people, if you have the knowledge. No questions asked. You can do that. Anybody can do that. It's an open source system. We are just there if you need help, right? So if you need help with implementation, or if you would like us to host it, because we have an environment that is certified, it sits on certified servers in the European Union. It has all these backup systems that I told you about, or that I alluded to. There's much more to tell about them. It has all of these monitoring and upgrade systems, and we will do all of that on your behalf if you wish to. But you can do it yourselves if you wish to, in that case. Yes.
Okay, so we go next. If Folio gives access to e-resources, can we then unsubscribe EDS if we acquire Folio? Are those two systems similar? And can you please analyze Folio versus EBSCO EDS?
Well, okay. What I showed you earlier, right? So I showed you here a part of the of Folio, right? So this is Folio. This is what I see as an administrator, right? Where I had my title. And this is EDS, where I see the end user results. And that is the big difference. Folio, as such, is a librarian system. This is what the library sees, where the library sets everything up. EDS is an end user system. EDS is what the student sees, right? The student is searching for this title, the public is searching for it, and they find information on that title. EDS is the OPAC, if you will. And EDS is not just the OPAC, it's a full discovery system with a full index, right? So you have access to more than 4 billion articles and patents and video files and all of these different formats all over the world. It's a search engine, right? So EDS is a search engine and Folio is an administrating system. Folio is a library system. EDS isn't a library system. EDS is a search engine, right? So that is the big difference. Folio for the librarian, EDS for the end user, Folio for the administration and the management of the library, and EDS is a search engine for finding results from the library. That's a big difference there, right? So we offer them together as a combination, right? So I can switch back and forth between these two interfaces, right? This is what the end user sees. This is what the librarian sees. End user, librarian. End user, librarian, right? And I need a library system in order to be able to manage it, and that's what Folio does. But I also need an end user system that I can put on my web page, that I can well, search anything through, right? Gynecology, whatever it might be. That is what my end users will do. So that is a big difference between those two systems, but they work in synchronization, in unison with each other, right? So I showed you several times that when I borrow something from Folio, I will see that in EDS. If I activate a specific package or specific license terms in Folio, I will see them here in EDS as well. So that's the combination.
Thank you. I think that it answers the question. Next question is regarding Panorama. It is regarding user statistics of electronic content. And
Yes.
The question is, I suppose that it counts access made through Folio and misses the direct access to content providers.
Oh, no. This, as I said, this system is not just connected to Folio, right? So these data are not coming from Folio. They are coming from usage consolidation, or that is a tool that we use at EBSCO that consolidates, as the name already says, right? Usage consolidation. It consolidates all of your counter reports. And that's essentially what this is all about. It doesn't have to be usage consolidation, by the way, right? It can be, for example, if you use Alma, right? We have customers who use Alma as a system, and Alma has a counter module that counts all of those counter statistics and gets them through Sushi, for example, or gets them in manual ways. And then you can ask Alma, the counterpart of Alma, to deliver these statistics. So what sits in the background here are the counter statistics from all these different platforms. As you can see here, I see database usage by publisher and by platform, right? So let me change it to platform. And I see, okay, my ProQuest platform was used as an access point to my my requests, to my materials. And you can see 229,000 requests through the ProQuest platform. This is not access through Folio, right? And Folio doesn't provide access to platforms, right? Folio is a library management system. The access through platforms is counted by counter reports, and those counter reports you can consolidate using such tools as Alma, right? I'm talking about a competitor's product here, right? So we are in direct competition with Alma, but it can still be used with Panorama. No questions asked. We tend to be as open as possible. You can use Alma. You can also use a usage consolidation from EBSCO, and that will then consolidate all of these electronic counter reports and show them in Panorama. So definitely not just Folio.
Thank you. So next question, I think you already answered. Does Folio support Unimark format? And what about Z3950 or EasyProxy?
Ah, yes. So 3 different questions, really. Let me go into Unimark first. So yes, in principle, it does support Unimark. However, in reality, we don't have customers using Folio with Unimark yet, right? So that doesn't mean, however, that it's not possible. It is possible, right? Because of all these routines that I showed you. For example, here, I translate the 945 field into the barcode. I tell Folio, so that field has to be the barcode. If I wanted to use a different nomenclature, if I wanted to use a different field number, and pardon me, I don't remember what the field for barcode is in Unimark, or the field for title, or whatever it might be, I can tell the system that this has to be translated that way. I can also use different other tools. Perhaps you're familiar with Kathmandu, right? So that is a tool that translates different formats into each other, and I can do that before Folio and then send that translated format directly into FOLIO. So that is entirely up to me. So yes, it does support Unimark, but in reality, all the customers we have, or let me put it the other way around, none of the customers we have at this point are using Unimark yet. In principle, yes. In reality, not yet. Then you asked about Easy Proxy.
Yes.
Easy Proxy, as we saw just earlier here in Panorama, this is Easy Proxy, right? So you see, these are Easy Proxy analytics. I can gather analytics in Panorama through Easy Proxy, no problem. I can also use Easy Proxy to access EDS, no problem. However, FOLIO is a library system, right? It's a management system. Again, there's the big difference between the user system, which can be EDS, it can also be a different system, but EDS is one such system where the end user sees the results. But FOLIO is the management system, and as such, it needs a fuller authentication, right? And that authentication I showed you here can be through Open Athens, for example, or Shibboleth, or ADFS, you know, the Microsoft directory, right? Active Directory. But it has to be more than just a proxy server. That is important. So Easy Proxy alone won't work, won't cut the deal for FOLIO. Why? Because a proxy server just, very simply put, it just changes your address. It just changes your IP address, essentially. It's a bit more than that, but essentially. However, for FOLIO, you need full authentication. You have to be authenticated with your specific rights, your specific permissions. And perhaps I, as an institution, if I am a medical institution, for example, I would like to have different rights associated with cardiologists than, for example, for pediatricians. And for just for the example's sake, the cardiologist should have access to Springer content, but the pediatricians shouldn't. They only should have access to Elsevier content. And all of these intricacies I cannot really do at the end of the day with just a proxy server. So I need an SSO system, single sign-on. And Open Athens is one such example, or Shibboleth can also be used, right? It's very widely used, and many others, but Easy Proxy alone wouldn't really do all the things that need to be done in order for FOLIO to work completely and correctly. So you can use EDS, sorry, you can use Easy Proxy, for example, with EDS or with some other systems of EBSCOs, but for FOLIO, it would not be quite sufficient. So Unimark, Easy Proxy, and what was the third one?
Z3950.
Yes, Z3950. Very good question. Let me perhaps just quickly show you something, right? So I am here in my inventory, my FOLIO inventory, the catalog, if you will, right? All of my catalogs. And now I would like to import something, for example, from the Library of Congress. And if I knew an identifier here, and let me just try it, right? So I think I have something already prepared in my links. So what shall we search for? Let's search for Greek again. What is it here? Let's say I'm interested in some books on Greek or Greece, and this book here, Greece and the Greeks. That is in the Library of Congress, right? So I'm on the web page of the Library of Congress right now, and I would like to import it into my FOLIO. Okay, so what do? I can either set up a data import routine, as we saw it earlier, or I would like to just copy this number, right? So the Library of Congress number. And if I go back into my FOLIO here, I can enter it right there and import it. And how does the import work? Through Z3950. Let me try that. It takes a few seconds, and then sometimes it gets queued if many of my colleagues have already ordered books. But in this case, it worked, right? So I just created a record, Greece and the Greeks, that came from the Library of Congress, and I used Z3950 to do that, right? So that is also this direct connection between the Library of Congress or anything else, right? So if I'm interested in, say, the WorldCat, right? OCLC WorldCat, then I can use that. And there is also a Z3950 connection with it. So yes, definitely Z3950 works with Folio.
This question came from Romania, because there is a virtual catalog based on Z3950, and
Yes.
the library is using Aleph, EDS, and Easy Proxy for remote access to databases.
Yes. So again, Easy Proxy as alone is a little bit too little. So we need something like Shibboleth in order to get that working, fully working with EDS and everything, and with the authentication and with the library account, right? So my loans and my requests and all of that, that requires a single sign-on system. But Z3950 is something that works absolutely well. And you see, this is another example. You might not know it. It's a German catalog, but it's a union catalog, K10 Plus, it's called. It's just a name, right? It's the name of that catalog. And we could set up the Romanian union catalog by adding an instance here, by adding its name, adding its details, right? So in the settings, I would then set up all the details, how exactly I should access that Z3950 interface, what exact data should be sent over that Z39 interface, and then I will be able to see that entry. I'll be able to enter my number here, and I will have that Z3950 connection. And of course, that also works in bulk, right? So this is a single record, but I can also import hundreds of records if I have set it up once. Yes.
Thank you. Next question is, does Folio works with authority files?
Yeah, so what we saw, where was it? What we saw here is, yes, so I can connect my MARC bibliographic record with the MARC authority if I want to. The point is that there are many different ways of working with authorities. And what we are doing right now is we are trying to improve those specific ways of how authorities work in Folio in ways that benefit the already existing customers. So if you would like to join that discussion group, and if you would like to start implementing Folio right now with your particularities, then we will take time during the implementation and we'll discuss with you exactly how those authority files should interact with Folio, because that can be sometimes quite complex. So yes, Folio does it, but it's a larger discussion that has to be had during implementation, and then we will set it up accordingly, according to all the details that are needed, because there might be quite a few details.
Thank you, Roman. Next question. To what extent is Folio localized to other languages? Is Czech localization full? Is Slovak localization available at this time? Or what are the options for adding Slovak localization or any other new language localizations?
Well, that was, I think, one of my very first windows that I showed you, where you have all kinds of different languages and you can add languages. So there is an interface that you can use, and you have the full list of all the labels that are available in Folio, right? So invoices, literally invoices. How should that be translated, right? So should it be facture or something like that, right? So that is something that I can go through then, and I add that list of labels as an administrator, right? I add that list of labels to my Folio, and then I will have a full Czech version of that, or a full Chinese version, or if I need Slovak, then I add that option to my system. So it's fully translatable, but somebody has to do it, right? So we don't have full Czech localization at this point. We don't have full Slovak in localization at this point. We don't have full Croatian or Albanian localization at this point, but it can always be done, right? So the options are always there, and during implementation, we will sit down with you and help you to translate everything as needed.
Thank you. And this is probably the last question, if nothing comes a little bit later. Is it fair to say that with Panorama, it is possible to cross data and make decisions based on evidence regarding usage, authentication,
Yes.
EDS, or some other resources.
Yes, indeed. So that ties back into this one example that I showed you briefly, where I have 3 different systems. I have my counter system that delivers me the actual access to the platforms or through the platforms that I subscribe to. Then I have SFX as a link resolver, or perhaps I have an ALMA link resolver, or perhaps I have FTF, full text finder, that's the EBSCO link resolver. And third iron or some other system, right? Perhaps I have a 4th or a 5th system that I would like to associate with this. And then I have this comparison of all 3 systems, third iron, SFX, counter. If you're not familiar with third iron, it doesn't matter, right? What it is, it's just a third system. So 3 different systems that I have compared here. And I could compare these 3 systems with my authentication, with my easy proxy, for example. I can compare, and that's also something that I showed you here, I can compare my campus system, where my grades, my student grades come from, with my library system, right? So this is the library usage. These are the grades. This is what comes through the campus system, the university system. Those 2 systems, I can compare those 2 data streams with, for example, cost. I would like to see how costly it is to have my students write good grades. Perhaps that's another question that I would like to ask. How does authentication compare to my library usage that I get from my counter systems? Anything, any systems that you have connected with our help to Panorama, you can then compare and combine the way you need them, and also the filters that you need here. So do I need different patron groups, faculty, graduates, postgraduates, and so on, degree levels, specialization, right? Advanced study, education, whatever it might be, those filters I also set up. So I decide what I want to do with the data from the systems that have already been connected with Panorama. And then I can compare them and combine them at will, as I wish. And if you have any questions in the aftermath, if you come up with questions tomorrow or in 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now, do feel free to contact us in any respect.
Okay, so if it is it, I would like to thank to all of you for all your participation, for your questions, and for taking time of your day to attend this webinar. I hope that you found this session informative and engaging. And of course, big thanks to Roman for his insights, and we all hope to see you on the next EBSCO webinar. Thank you, everybody, and have a great rest of the day.